Europe is being flooded by Africans and North Africans and Middle Eastern. Is reverse colonization happening?
10 years ago, Europe witnessed unprecedented migration movements. They were not in the hundreds, not in the thousands, but in the millions. The unprecedented number brought the continent to shock and standstill. However, German Chancellor Angela Merkel, in what has become a historic declaration, stated that we can do it, referring to the reception and integration of those fleeing war.
Wir schaffen das. Wir schaffen das, und wo uns etwas im Wege steht.
In 10 years, the migration movements that were met with open arms and optimism have also brought with them fear and rising walls. Let's take a look back at the events that changed the European landscape forever.
There was not enough information for people, or maybe systems were not in place.
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a good way to put it. In effect, it is a reverse colonization, especially because when you figure colonization, isn't it just about going to a country and taking the resources and implanting our system of government and our system of thought and our morality and all that stuff? That's what a colonization would be. We extract stuff and we leave our system of thought behind. So yeah, I think in part, when you have folks in this kind of number who really don't want to assimilate, or maybe aren't being helped in assimilating, or maybe are being encouraged not to assimilate, I don't know. But you have all these folks coming from a different place and they don't want to merge what they're all about into what their new home is all about. They're flooding a new place with their own things that they like to do. Then yeah, it's changing the culture of these countries. It's a reverse colonization.
Okay, I want to give you this interesting stat. In London, one of my favorite cities in the world, the 1981 census, 85% of the people identified as being white. And just 40 years later in the 2021 census, that number is barely 50%. It's like 54%. So
that's a big change.
Yes.
But so I'll tell you this, Rich, though, that wouldn't mean anything because, people are people.
Of course.
And at least here in this country, when my parents emigrated, people were emigrating here not to change it into the whatever shithole they came from. They were trying to integrate the beautiful parts of their culture that they took with them, and they were trying to integrate it here. So the big question I would have is what effect, because if it's a slow immigration and you wind up with a culture that is enriched over years, and it may look different, because there are people who now are different shades, but who cares about that? That's, we all cut and we all bleed.
Exactly.
Is what do we bring in our hearts? And my question is, since we have seen a lot of almost, it's not negative migration, but it's more like a migration that doesn't respect that this, London, England, or the United States or France, man, I can never go back to where I'm from because things aren't good for me there. But this is the place where I have to make my stand. It's like what Columbus did when he got here. Cortez, I beg your pardon, Cortez. Cortez came to the New World, and his sailors, they were all living right on the beach. They weren't building stuff. They weren't going out there and figuring out the New World. They were hanging out at the boat. They'd rather swab the deck than actually go and do something in the new land. But what Cortez did was he sent some of the special forces to burn his own ships. So these sailors, when they woke up in the morning, the ships weren't there anymore. They were charred husks in the water in the harbor. So they had to make a life there. That's exactly what he did. So in the old days, at least in the United States and in Europe, people would burn their ships and they'd be like, okay, I'm here. This is where I'm going to make my future. I'm not going back to that shithole. But I'm going to say, especially in the last 10 years, 15 years, folks have not been encouraged to do that, even through the governments that they're infiltrating. They come to the United States, You have a whole lot of, we were so generous to let all these Somali folks in. They all went to Michigan, and 80,000 of them decided to do fraud and crime against the U.S. government.
That's crazy.
So this is not the kind of America. This is not the kind of immigration. This is not, and in England too, they've got the grooming gangs that come from Pakistan, and they're raping all these white girls. And this is for real. This is legit. You got these grooming gangs from Pakistan, and they get a slap on the wrist, or the white folks there, they're being told, you know, shut up, you're being racist. You know, you don't know their ways. And it's like, well, I do know their ways. They're taking these 15-year-old girls, they're buttoning them all up. They're doing the old pimp routine. They're saying, hey, you know, I love you. You're beautiful. You're sweet. Because they always target the ones that are a little bit ostracized. You know, they're pretty, but, you know, maybe they don't really know how to get along with other girls. So they're not really getting the attention they want. They're brought in, you know, they have sex with them a few times. Say, how much I love you. You know, if you love me, you'll have sex with my friend. And then they do that. And they say, if you love me, you'll have sex with my other friend. And really, it's not really a friend. It's a John. And they're collecting money every time these 15-year-old girls have sex with these guys. So this is not the immigration I think that England had in mind. And this is completely and totally different. So I'm thinking that the immigration that came, you know, 30, 40 years ago, I think that's tried and true and beautiful and integrated. And, you know, we got some of the best Indian food in the world you find in London, England, from these beautiful, wonderful people who brought their beautiful culture. They left the filth behind and they kept just the beautiful part of that Indian culture. But now you've got their kids who walk around with swords and will stab a kid just because he says, why do you get to carry a sword and I don't? Because in England, you can't carry a sword unless it's a religious article that you wear on you. And just about 6 months ago, there was a kid that was murdered by this Sikh. And he was wearing all his ceremonial swords, and the kid came up to him. The dude stabbed him. Boom, boom.
Wow.
The police were called, and then while the kid was bleeding on the floor, they handcuffed the kid on the charge of racism because of what the perpetrator said to the police. He said, yeah, he was making fun of my race. So we fought. And, you know, now he's on the floor. And the police thought that just that the Indian guy, you know, just gave him a good punch in the chops. And when the guy said, he stabbed me, I'm bleeding, then the cop said, sure you are, mate, sure you are. It's like, come on, man.
Yeah.
Come on.
Well, I think there's two major ways of immigration that happened over the last 150 years. And one is like, you know, the Industrial Revolution happened, and after World War II, so a lot of these European countries, including America, they actually send invites to these countries to come. We need employees, we need workers, we need that. So those people had a sense of belonging. You know, because they came with an invite. Now this last wave of immigrants, a lot of them are probably people that were seeking political asylum, or they were just kind of like the riffraffs of their society. And so they're not of the same stock as the people that came like in the 50s and the 60s and whatnot. So I think, so you have two different demographics that's coming in. And how do we reconcile those two different demographics? Or can we even reconcile those two different demographics?
Well, I think we can definitely reconcile it. I think the first step is for all these nations to get better at who they're going to let in. Because, you know, on the Statue of Liberty, and this is what people who want to push back on this say, you know, Statue of Liberty says, give me your tired, give me your humbled masses yearning to breathe free. Yeah. But give me your humbled masses yearning to be free. Although I don't think in this little plaque that they have on the Statue of Liberty, it talks about, and let these folks have the maturity to have personal accountability and to really appreciate the opportunity that they're being given, just like the United States appreciates the opportunity to receive a new type of labor, a new type of business person, a new type of cultural leader, a new type of bridge builder, a new type of hope, with all these new people to breathe new life into this beautiful, wonderful 250-year-old nation. I think that that's a beautiful thing. But, you know, when the way we have to do it is if we let these people in, we can't chase them out. And England can't either. You can't say, yeah, we approved you, but now we're going to toss you. Unless they commit crimes, they really shouldn't be tossing anybody. But basically, we need to say, look, the the show's already started. If you're not here when the show starts, you got to wait in the lobby, and you got to wait until the next show. And then the next show, you're gonna have to get in line and see if you can get a seat. And we're gonna check on you to see if you can get a seat based on what you bring to the table. You know, just because you say that you have a hard time in the country you came from, gee, our heart goes out to you. But in order for you to qualify to come here, then you're actually going to have to bring a certain minimum standard to the table. And the minimum standard isn't you have to have a special skill. That's really more for the H-1B visas. But if you're going to get asylum here or in England, your special skill needs to be, I am a peacemaker. I can build bridges. That's the only thing, and you're not a criminal in your home country. That's the only thing I really want from my immigrants, that they're bridge builders. Because bridge builders, one thing for sure is they know how to take personal accountability. And if they know how to take personal accountability, then they're going to feel like assholes if they can't feed themselves. So they're not going to be on the dole. You know that they're going to go to work. So everything good, Rich, happens when it starts with folks who can be personally accountable. So you need to be able to call somebody out and say, well, what about in your culture when you guys do all that Sharia law stuff? And the response has to be, in the United States, that's not the law. In the United States, we have American jurisprudence. Sharia law does not live in the United States, and I do not approve of implementing it. My religion is all about Sharia law, but I had to leave my country because it was oppressive for me. It was oppressive for my wife and my sister-in-law and my daughters and my nieces, and we're all here now. And we're all here to follow American law and build our little businesses and hopefully become multimillionaires in this beautiful country. That, Rich, used to be the spirit in which people used to come here. I want to become a millionaire in this beautiful country. And sure, would they be exploited by some bad employer sometimes? Absolutely. Stuff happens all the time. Would they be made fun of at school sometimes because, they smell like cabbage and we don't eat much cabbage here, whatever, Ukrainians always, they like the people from the old Soviet Union, I used to get them at my school all the time, Jewish refugees. And because they would come because I went to a Jewish school when I was a kid. And, they would dress funny. They wore Russian shoes. They smelled because they didn't have the habit of bathing every day. And sure, they got some flack for that. But, that's it. That's it. And believe it or not, kids, making fun of somebody the way they smell because they're foreign isn't violence. It's just being a dick, but it's not violence. Okay. Words are not violence.
I agree. Okay. What about this? Do you think, not maybe so much the United States, but countries such as England and France and even Belgium, there's this old saying, it's a farmer saying, and I know Malcolm X got in a lot of trouble for saying this after the assassination of JFK. He said the chicken's coming home to roost. And so maybe is this some type of poetic justice that England, France, Belgium, Spain, they colonize all these North African countries, all these African countries, and now it's coming back to them. The chicken is actually coming home to roost.
It could very well be. Yeah. On the one hand, sure, whenever there's colonization, there's going to be some damage done. I mean, that's just the way it is. Anytime you build a new road, you're going to disturb the horned spotted toad. That's why we do so many. That's why it cost us billions of dollars to build 30 miles of railway, high-speed railway, because of all these studies on what the environmental impact is going to be on these little things, these these little birds and little toads. So are the chickens coming home to roost? Yeah. I mean, what countries leave behind in colonization is hot and cold running water, a justice system that works, that isn't savage, toilets, schools, all kinds of stuff, Enlightenment thinking, there's a lot of stuff that we bring to the table, Western nations, when we colonize. And what do we ask for in return? Well, we ask for mineral resources. We ask for compliance from the population. We ask for stuff like that. We ask to let the ruling colonizers, not die or suffer property damage, in exchange for all these beautiful buildings. Oh, so I'll give you an example. So after World War One, when you had all of the Arabian Peninsula, it used to be part of the Ottoman Empire, I believe, and so Ottoman Empire fell apart after World War One, so that didn't exist anymore. So what do you have? You had, and that was at the same time that oil, like 20 years earlier, like in 1900, oil was a thing. But oh boy, we don't have to hunt whales anymore. Now we can use this petroleum. Good. Okay, so 20 years later, now oil was what it was all about. So what the British did was they went and found a large nomadic tribe. There were a lot of nomadic tribes there because they were all Bedouins. They were all just roaming Arabs in Arabia. There was no organization. There were no cities. There was nothing like that. And British Petroleum comes down and they just find the first large tribe leader that they could find. There were a lot of them, but they just found one. And they said to the patriarch, they said, you got a lot of this oil here. What we're going to do is we're going to help you out because it's a resource, but it's kind of messy. We're going to extract it. We're going to take it to England and we're going to pay you a very nice sum, maybe about 3% of the value of it. And the British government is arranged for the banks in Britain to hold the money for you. And you can ask for it anytime you want. And the head of the patriarch of that family said, okay. And they said, and you're going to be filthy rich. And Mr. Saud, Saudi Arabia, if you get the name, Mr. Saud, the tribal leader, said, Assalamu alaikum, my brother. I'm very happy to become rich with the British. And now we have Saudi Arabia, one of America's greatest allies in the region, and because the British built them up that way. So there's a lot of things going both ways in colonization.
Yeah, there is, but I don't think it was ever that peaceful. A lot of times, a lot of countries were brutally, like the women were brutally raped, and their system is worse than it has ever been before. Like a lot of countries, especially like in the middle Africa and stuff like that, like Sudan, those areas like that is worse than ever.
Right.
Due from colonization.
Well, the colonizers are long gone from those areas.
But they planted seeds of hate amongst different tribes and stuff like that at the same time. That's the mind games that they played.
Right. Well, that's most likely true. But what's also true is that these tribes had no love for each other anyway.
They did, and they didn't. But
so they were always combating each other. In fact, one of the greatest shame that the West ever conceived of was the continuation of the thousands-year-old tradition of enslaving foreign peoples, and that's one of the greatest tragedies that human beings ever inflict upon each other, these white slave traders, when they would sail to the west coast of Africa, they didn't have the wherewithal, the might. They didn't have enough numbers, and they weren't soldiers, so they couldn't go into the interior to find people to enslave. So what they did was they just stayed at the coasts and offered
bounties.
Offered bounties and said, "Hey, do you have any tribes that you're in conflict with that aren't your friends?" "Yes, we do." "Okay, well, why don't you go and fetch some of them as prisoners of war, and we'll pay you per head."
Exactly.
And maybe the first chief said, "No, I'm not going to do that." So, boom, who is the chief now? Are you the deputy chief? Yes. Okay, you're the new chief. All right, I have a proposition for you. And then the new chief says, "Before you say any more, I accept your offer." So yes, a lot of it was done under gunpoint.
Yeah, it was.
Said, you better do it.
I mean, it was.
But the reality is, it doesn't really have to be under gunpoint. There's a lot of people. There might be people that you may not even realize that are doing some things because they're being paid. And you would think, gee, you really don't have to do that. Like at the DMV. I remember when my kids were getting ready to drive. I remember I met somebody who worked at a DMV and who basically would get his friends to the front of the line, and if something needed to be done to correct something, he would get that done for them. And it's not like he would say, "Give me money for that." It was just like something he would do for people he knew. And I didn't do that. I didn't ask for that kind of help. But there are people out there who want to do things, to better their own situation.
Of course.
And why would this fella do it? Because he was just a kindly soul who was willing to break a regulation in violation of what his employment contract was, in order just to be kind and maybe to get favors in return. So, human beings, we're pretty complicated, and we're able to rationalize a lot of immorality. But at the end of the day, the whole concept of morality is, Nietzsche talked about the concept of master morality and slave morality, and he called the slave thinking, slave morality, folks who are critical about those who get up and get what they want. They go where they want, they do what they want, they say what they want. So you have the master morality, and you're not following that whole Judeo-Christian Western thinking where the meek shall inherit the earth, and all these sorts of things. It wouldn't be right to do that.
Yeah.
The master morality says, I'm going to do that. I'm going to follow my animal spirits, my animal passions. I'm not going to be a slave to rationality, but I'm not going to be a slave to my emotions either. But I'm going to be a complete man that experiences life in every way possible. I'm going to touch everything that I think is going to benefit me. I'm going to be a thoughtful man, but I'm going to be a man of action too. Master morality. It could be for a woman too. Slave morality is to resent those who are able to achieve because, oh, gee, he sold drugs to get there. It's like, well, the law against selling drugs is man's law. It's not God's law. Well, he killed a man to get there. Well, we don't know if he deserved it or not. The fact that there's a law against murder, against coming up from behind somebody and shooting them in the back of the head. There's a law against that. I'm glad there is. But, I'm sure the man had his reasons. Well, he was just paid for it. He's a hitman. Okay, well, he's feeding his family. Who are we to judge? Yes, we can judge as members of a civil society. He's not following the law. He's breaking the law of murder. But the man's feeding his family. He's doing contract work. Sometimes he kills somebody that, maybe is decent. But most of the time, if he's doing contract work, he's killing people who are indecent. So I think it's complicated.
Well, let me ask you this then. Do you think these new colonizers, these Pakistanians in England, you think they have the master mentality or the slave mentality?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I think, okay. So I'm going to say that it's definitely a postmodern situation. Up is down and down is up. So on the one hand, the postmodern thing is and I'm going to get to this answer, but to use it in a different context where I heard it recently is woke folks. Woke folks, when you sit down to debate somebody, the first thing you have to do is you have to create definitions so that you know what you're talking about.
Yes.
The whole woke concept is, oh, you want to make it all about definitions. We're talking about real ideas here. It's like, well, without establishing definitions, we really can't. We're talking different languages. It's kind of like, what is a woman? It's like, well, a woman is just a word. It's just a word. Yeah, but it's a word that we decided means something in Western society.
Yes.
If we want it to mean other things, we need to change the dictionary definition. But they get so upset when you try and like start with, let's establish some definitions so that we're not talking past each other.
Correct.
But part of that ideology is to talk past other people, because they're not making any sense. That's the whole point of postmodernism. It's not supposed to make sense. It's supposed to be irrational. But here people are earnestly, because they're not really well educated, despite the fact that they're almost all college grads, these woke people, they're very earnestly trying to say that, definitions don't matter, and they say conflicting statements, which they defend the truth of those statements. And that's because they're all caught up in their fields. And at the end of the day, Rich, I think it's when we're caught up in our fields, that's when we miss what the real answer to the problems are. it may not be a pretty answer. Like sometimes the answer is, like last week we were doing the Am I the Asshole segment, and one of the things was the lady had cancer, so the guy was stepping out on her. And the question is, couldn't he just wait until she passed away peacefully in her sleep, from cancer? And that's actually a solution for him. Just to be a good husband and just be a doting husband and love her and support her until she quietly passes. Sometimes that's the solution. But if you talk to a group of people who are in their fields, they might think that I'm the most reprehensible person in the world to say sometimes you have to just wait for your wife to pass before you start to live again. And because you have to give those years of your life to your spouse, because she's the one you love, and she's the one that you said until death do us part. And now you have to support her until she passes. You have to suspend your own life. You have to have a duty greater than yourself. And that's something that folks who want to make trouble, whether it's entitled folks or folks that don't want to assimilate, they don't believe they have a duty to anything larger than themselves or their own little communities. They think that their duty ends there. So just like a husband's duty is to his wife as she's going through an illness on her way to death, he really should wait. He really should just buy a whole bottle of Nivea cream and just wait until she passes, and then he can go and get his real dog on. So really at the end of the day, approaching things rationally and reasonably, they'll call you inhuman, they'll say this and that and the other, but at the end of the day, all the feels stuff is just noise, because everything good in history has been a result of rational thought. The feel stuff is what makes us human. But if we try and act on our feels, our feels are temporary. To try and act on our feels in any kind of permanent way is what destroys things. So a lot of times we have these folks coming in, these immigration coming in, like they do in England, with these Pakistani grooming gangs and things like that. You have these children of immigrants who walk around with their swords and are stabbing people. And the white police are so woke that they put the kid who's bleeding from his liver and who dies on the scene, they put him in handcuffs. So
up is down.
The up is down. It's all postmodern now, and they're all up in their fields. It's called end of empire. This is the way empires end.
Or like late stage capitalism.
Late stage capitalism. Yeah.